Hey folks, so I kind of wanted to get a video out, because cripes, I need to do more videos, and I figured I would like to tell y'all about my history with animation and such, since, as you might have noticed, I'm starting to do a few more animated show reviews, both anime reviews and, like, Western animation reviews, and my history with the medium is, well, a bit unusual. Now, first things first, I was born in 1985. I know, I'm much older than you probably think I am. And that actually matters a lot. Like, cripes, I did not realize how young people are these days. Things have changed so much each decade. And I think that's important to note. Like, yeah, you have no clue how big of an effect, like, Sailor Moon had on all of media. Just, it's actually kind of nuts. Even though it was never really that big in America, it still had an effect on, like, the animated medium. But I'm getting off topic. So I was born in 1985. And as you might or might not know, I have an older sister. And my older sister got into anime at a very, very, very young age. We're talking 5, 6, 7. So, pretty much immediately, I was inundated with anime, and that's, like, really weird. We were into anime in the 80s. And you're probably wondering why. Well, to be blunt, my sister was not really much of a Barbie person. She wanted shows with ass-kicking women in them, and to be blunt, Western animation in the 80s was not really providing that. We're not... The exact details of how she found Japanese animation is still muddy, but the 80s were a very weird time, because that was back when everything animated was considered a kids show, so if it came out, it wound up in the children's section of your local video rental store, even if it was Uratsuki Doji. That's one of the earliest, like, tentacle hentais, by the way. So, yeah, like, stuff like that was winding up in kids section because it was animated. And on top of that, we had celebrities just for kids' home videos, which I want to talk about in so much more detail, which actually took anime, generally cut out about a half hour of them, and sold them for kids. And the funny thing was, it wasn't necessarily butchered. Like, one of the most notable ones that I really want to talk about in detail was they released the iconic Harlock movie, Captain Harlock movie, My Youth on Arcadia, as Vengeance of the Space Pirates. And while they cut out like a half hour of the film, they didn't actually change much of anything else. The translation, like, I have a Blu-ray now that's letting me, like, compare the old dub that they had versus, like, the original release versus the original Japanese. And watching it, Japanese subtitles with the old 1980s Celebrities Just for Kids Home Video dub, it was an accurate translation. And that movie is dark, it is depressing, it is very much not for kids. There are people getting shot. It is literally about the Earth losing a war and being subjugated by aliens. Not a happy film, and that was released as a kids movie, unedited, like, barely, a little bit edited, not a little bit censored, but not really. The majority of it was kept. So it was a very, very weird time. Like, this was before the term anime even existed, and before Japanimation was even a term. This was back when we just called it Japanese animation, alright? And We don't know what was the first anime my sister saw. My mother sometimes says it was Crying Freeman, other times she says it was Vampire Hunter D. It might have been Captain Harlock, but I know at some point my sister caught Captain Harlock on TV because that was like her favorite show ever. And if you look up like Queen Emeraldis, that is a badass female character. I want you to imagine, 5, 6, 7-year-old girl, who's been stuck with, Rainbow Bright and Strawberry Shortcake stumbling across Queen Emeraldis, and yeah, that was kind of a life-changing experience for literally everyone in my family. And of course, I was along for the ride because, number one, it's my sister's way or the highway. I am not getting in her way, okay? And number two, they're giant transforming robots, and I do not argue with giant transforming robots. So I was into anime before I was even in school. I was doing the Japanese animation is better than Western animation back in 1st and 2nd grade. I dressed as Super Saiyan Son Goku for Halloween in 2nd grade in, I believe that was like 1991? Rest assured, no one knew what that was. I didn't even know what that was. I just thought he was the coolest dude ever. So it was a very strange time for me because we were all about that Japanese animation super early on, and I have so many stories to tell about going to Chinatown and watching bootleg tapes. My sister actually wound up trying to watch Kiki's Delivery Service with no subtitles. Instead, the translation was just printed on a sheet of paper that you read while watching the movie. She got about halfway through it. I saw Bubblegum Crisis at a very early age, and I remember the ordeal of trying to get anime back then. And I think I've got some pretty interesting stories to tell from that time. And, cripes, it is amazing how much anime has changed in America. Like, since then. Like, literally, the whole thing's been flipped on its head. Back then, subtitles were considered the premium experience. Everyone looked down on dubs, and we were generally talking about shows that were, popular in Japan 5-10 years before they ever came to America, and we kept talking about them for a while. Now, dubs are the premium experience, subtitles are considered cheap, and we're talking about shows literally the same day they premiere in Japan, and they fall out of style just as fast. It's amazing how much things have changed. And sometime I need to put together a compilation of terrible dubs to explain why subtitle purists are a thing. Because I certainly kinda am one, but I get the appeal of a good dub. After Cowboy Bebop, which was really a game changer. Like, seriously, Cowboy Bebop was the show that caused a lot of people to go, maybe dubs are actually really nice. Because it is nice to not have to read subtitles, to just be able to sit back, relax, and enjoy the animation, let it play out. It is way more relaxing if it's a good dub. Unfortunately, a bad dub can ruin things horribly. Like, you have no clue. Like, they can utterly destroy characters if a character is dubbed badly. And that's not even getting into questions of how much the script has been altered and doctored for a dub. There are a multitude of reasons why subtitle purists existed, but the long and short of it is subtitle purists are generally old people, and we survived a point in time where everything was dubbed by ADV. Like, in the VHS tape days, you didn't get a choice between dubs and subs, okay? Like, you bought one or the other, and most stores did not stock subtitles, and subs cost more than dubs. Like, big time. So it was hard to find subtitled anime. So a lot of, and that was like, crap, we barely had the internet back then. Most people didn't have the internet. There was no Amazon. So you bought what you could find, and that was usually dubs, and usually from ADV, which was a company that couldn't dub its way out of a paper freaking bag. Cripes, I cannot stress how bad their dubs were. It didn't help that I have a fondness for, I guess you'd call them proto-moe shows. The shows that are all about, like, teams of cute girls kicking ass. You know, I watch a lot of those kinds of shows. Galaxy Fraulein Yuna is sort of a thing to me, right? So, those were, like, the worst dubbed shows. No one could do a cute girl voice back then. And the pool of dubbed voice artists was just so much smaller. And they were probably paid way less because the industry was just way smaller. And as it is, it's questionable if they're paid well now. I don't know what the dub industry is like, but things have changed drastically there. But there's still reasons for people to prefer subtitles, if only for safety. Like, I don't trust a dub unless I'm hearing, like, unanimous thumbs up, this dub is freaking great. And honestly, it always kind of annoys me when people review an anime based entirely on the dub, because I consider the anime itself and the dub to be two separate works. Rest assured, a good dub should be appreciated, because cripes, that's a lot of hard work to actually do a dub right. But an anime shouldn't be reviewed poorly because it has a bad dub. The dub should be reviewed poorly. It is very possible for a fantastic anime to get a terrible dub. Case in point, my favorite anime of all time, Dragon Half. Yes, the dub is terrible. We are not arguing this point. Just don't get me started. That one makes me physically ill. It's a thing. And cripes, Dragon Half has a story behind it too. You realize that was actually originally released in America in like 1993, 1994, right? But it was subtitle only, hard box, green VHS tape. That was how Dragon Half was originally released. It was called the undubbable anime, until they managed to do a kinda decent job dubbing Excel Saga, and ADV decided to try their luck at dubbing Dragon Half. So in like 1999, they did a dub of it, which caused a re-release, and anime was so much more popular back then that most people saw Dragon Half through the garbage-ass dub, which many of them found to be perfectly fine, but I find it... And that's one of the other things, like, people will say, well, comedy anime are better dubbed. Not necessarily. If nothing else, the entire joke behind King Siva is completely ruined by that dub. But as you can see, anime was kind of a big deal in my household, in my world. I was all about that anime life. Now, that didn't mean we completely snubbed Disney. We were pretty fond of Disney initially, They put out the big movies everyone's talking about. We go see them in theaters. We were pretty fine with Disney unless they were portraying cats as villains, which, by the way, that's why we didn't watch any, Don Bluth movies either. My sister was a huge cat person and hated when cats were portrayed as villains. So anything with a villainous cat, she got really grumpy about. So there goes the entire Don Bluth movie library. Bye, Don Bluth. Seriously. So, and that's how things were until The Lion King. As of The Lion King, we began to boycott Disney, which was very awkward because my mother was a massive Elton John fangirl. I don't know if fangirl's even the... You know what? No, it is. She wrote, her own fanzine. She produced a rather popular Elton John fan magazine that she published and distributed, and she has all sorts of stories from back then. So my mother was all about that Elton John. And then The Lion King comes out. Elton John's doing the music for it, but we had to boycott it. And you're like, wait, why did you boycott? It's amazing how much this weird little story has been lost to time because of the Kimba Simba debacle. If you're unfamiliar, Osamu Tezuka, creator of Astro Boy, generally considered to be the father of anime, had created a show way back in the distant past called Kimba the White Lion, or alternately Jungle Emperor Leo. And wouldn't you know it, The Lion King bears a striking resemblance to Kimba the White Lion, to the point of the main character being named Simba. And this was actually really well known, even though anime was not big in America. Everyone heard about this, and everyone, took the side of Kimba. They actually made a joke about this in The Simpsons. Mostly because it seemed so cut and dry at the time. The protagonist of the original show was named Kimba. The protagonist of The Lion King is named Simba. You changed a letter, case closed. Of course, I have heard 9 billion different explanations recently because I decided to look into it. What was the deal? Because Disney was always like, no, we didn't rip off Kimba the White Lion. No, we didn't rip off Kimba the White Lion. And it's like, that seems really suspicious. But then I hear things like, oh, well, The Lion King was based on an old African folktale, and it's the same folktale that Kimba the White Lion was based on. Well, that would explain things. Oh, Simba is like the African word for lion. I guess that explains the name. Oh, it's really just Macbeth with lions. Yeah, I guess. But then you have, conflicting stories from people who worked on the movie, with some of them saying, yeah, no, I've never heard of Kimba the White Lion. But a couple on staff did say, yeah, I thought that's what we were making. Which, you kind of makes sense. You're working at Disney. Disney buys the rights to a lot of things. It is plausible that Disney would have bought the rights to do a Disney version of Kimba the White Lion. So that's what some of the people working on the movie thought happened. And I do highly recommend you look it up yourself, because there's a lot of similarities. I did eventually find a VHS tape of a few episodes of Kimba. It's like, yeah, these are strikingly similar. They have the hyenas, they have, Pride Rock, they have Mufasa in the moon, pretty much, except it's Leo. They had the stampede scene. I think the difference there was that Scar was female in this one. Scar was the aunt instead of an uncle. So that was a difference. But, there were a lot of parallels. So we were boycotting Disney movies. Starting with Lion King, no more Disney. Disney was banned from my house. And that has to be one of the weirdest, most mind-blowing things. Because watching all of the animation reviewers and some streamers and stuff, there's some people who live that Disney life. There are some people who are super hardcore Disney fans. Both one of the streamers I love watching, Gunstar Hero 7, as well as Lindsay Ellis, for better or for worse, are both super big Disney fans. And it's so surreal because it's yeah, no, that was not my life at all. We were very, very strictly anti-Disney in this house, which made Kingdom Hearts really awkward. Somehow we did manage to sneak out to see Mulan and Tarzan, but that was it. I didn't see Beauty and the Beast in theaters. I didn't see Lion King in theaters. I didn't see literally any Disney movies after that. I've never actually seen all of Toy Story. I pretty much was un-Disneyed until my sister had moved out and The Incredibles was released, wherein I picked that up because I saw a GIF online that made me say, maybe I should give The Incredibles a shot. Let's see what this movie is about. Everyone's really praising it. And I was walking up to the Sam Goody near my house, and I was going in there to go look at their anime selection, and The Incredibles had just come out, and they were like, release day sale. It was $25 for a 2-disc special edition. And I was like, screw it, why not? I got a pocket full of cash. Let's give this a shot. And it was one of the best experiences I ever had, because I set aside an entire day while my parents were on vacation and I was house sitting to just watch The Incredibles and all the special features. I watched the movie once. Then I popped in the special features disc and watched all the making of stuff. And then I popped in the movie again and watched it with the commentary. It was one of the best days ever. Yo, I just sat there eating and watching The Incredibles and immersing myself in the movie. It was a complete blast. I loved it. And that actually got me seeking out Disney DVDs, because Disney was releasing all these, like, platinum editions and stuff that were 2-disc, and they had just a pile of special features on them. And I pretty much got back into Disney because they had so many special features on their discs, and I wanted to see all the making of stuff. I love stuff like that. And on that note, I'm really cross with Disney now because they've stopped doing that. After The Princess and the Frog, they have not been doing all the special features. Like, Wreck-It Ralph barely had any special features, and I was outright trolled by Frozen. Like, I'm still pissed about that, because I really loved Frozen when I saw it in theaters, saw it twice in a row, loved that movie, couldn't wait for the home release, because I wanted to see the making of, I wanted to hear some commentary, I want some behind-the-scenes stuff. Thing comes out, I look at the back, and there's not a lot of features, but I see it has a thing called How Did We Make Frozen? And it's like, okay, well, that'll do, let's watch that. And I pop it in, and there's this big musical number, and it ends with, "We don't know." I was so mad. There was no making of Frozen. There was a How Did We Make Frozen, and it is a BS musical number. Now, apparently, they did actually produce a How Did We Make Frozen thing, but it aired on a TV channel, and you can, like, spend $2 to watch it on YouTube once. And I'm like, no, I want a hard copy of this, and I want to watch it on my own time, and you can go screw yourself. Put it on the effing DVD. And Disney's been getting worse and worse about this. Like, Zootopia was the same. Like, Zootopia actually has some special features, but there was this entire making of documentary that a friend of mine linked me to on YouTube that is not on the disc. And certain other DVDs, it's like, oh, if you want the special features, here's a secret code to type in on our website. Well, gee, that's great as long as you keep the special features side up. But what happens in a couple years when you redesign the Disney website and you take down your special features page? Put them on the disc. And then there's the re-releases that they've been doing, wherein they've been doing like these Blu-ray re-releases, but they have less special features than the 2-disc DVD releases they did years ago. And I'm like, what the crap? I know I still have the DVD release. I pick up the Blu-ray, there's less features on it. Quit screwing us, Disney. Really pissed about that. So that was what got me back into watching Disney movies. But there is sort of a second thing to this. Around the same time I watched The Incredibles. Keep in mind, I had been going super hardcore, anime purist, anime is the best, Western animation is garbage. But there was this garbage used game and movie store near me. It closed down pretty quickly. The guy there was... The reason it was garbage was it was run by one guy who was always on the phone. Always. I have never seen him get off the phone. He had like one of those Bluetooth earpieces back when they were new, and he wouldn't get off it. Every time you were in the store, he was on that phone the entire time. And it was a pretty garbage store. But that guy really liked him some effing Cool World. He had some interesting Cool World merchandise there. And I remember we had this old animation magazine from back before Cool World came out with some pictures in it. And, you know, I was looking at it, I'm like, yo, I kind of want to see this movie. I'm kind of interested about it. I'm kind of curious about it. So one day, this is like the most embarrassing effing thing. I waited until my parents were out of town after I had the ability to drive, after I had my license. Parents were out of town, like first time they were out of town and I could drive and I had money of my own. I snuck out, went to that place to spend like $5 on a VHS tape of Cool World, brought it home to watch it. Well, that was one of the... I wasn't even disappointed. I don't even know... I think it's a rite of passage, you know? Everyone has to watch Cool World at some point in their life and discover what a clusterfuck that thing was. Because that movie... Ooh. And I know I've heard about what really happened, how it was supposed to be a horror movie, and Ralph Bakshi got completely screwed, and how he punched the director and everything. I know, but just knowing nothing about it other than it is kind of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but more adult with sexy cartoon ladies in it. And you pop it in, you get really disappointed. Not even disappointed, you just get confused. That is a confusing ass movie. But after that, I sort of was like, you know, that was really well animated though. And this was a thing at some point in time? And it kind of got this interest flowing in me where I'm like, what's the deal with, like, other American animated movies? And this was before all the video stores closed down. So I drove around to the different, like, Hollywood Videos and Blockbusters and stuff, mostly Hollywood Video, because it had a really eclectic selection of VHS movies before they were completely phased out. And I would go there, and I would look through just any animated VHS tape I could find of just some unusual looking movie. I would rent it and I would watch it, because now I was like deeply fascinated by this, because I had completely ignored Western animation for so much of my life. And in a way, it like really opened my eyes to why anime was the way it was when it was released in America, why there was so much focus on bringing over hyper-violent OVAs and stuff. It's because in America, it was such a struggle to get anything even remotely adult made that was animated, because, all animation was for kids, all animation is Disney. And so what few things were able to have even mildly adult themes, they became like these weird cult classic odd things that people obsessed about and really remembered. And so in that quagmire of animation desperately trying to be more adult and not being allowed to be more adult, you release, some random garbage hyper-violent anime and, it makes a splash. It is a big deal, because, people don't see animated gore like that, especially not, really nice, detailed animated gore. Or, animated nudity and scenes. That kind of stuff had so much shock value to it that, that was sort of the focus of a lot of early anime distribution, was to do cheap underground releases of whatever OVAs they could get their hands on that had that sort of content in it. And it's like, wow, I really understand why something like, Genocyber was brought over and was a deal back in those early days, back in the very early 90s and the 80s and stuff. It was such a different time. But having seen all these Disney documentaries about the struggle of making an animated movie, it gave me a greater appreciation for these films, because it's like, okay, Disney has to go through all these hoops to make their animated movies, and they're Disney. They got Disney money and Disney talent and a Disney workforce behind them. You get some of these smaller movies from smaller studios, and you can only imagine the kind of ordeal it was to get these things produced. And so now I had just a much greater appreciation and respect for these. And ever since then, I've been at this for quite a few years. This, as you can hear, this sort of process dates back to the waning days of VHS tapes and rental stores. I can't believe it's been that long since I started this journey. But so I've sort of been rediscovering Western animation. I've been, trying to find more unusual Western animated films from smaller studios and really get in, and not even just Western animated, just animated in general. I'm really trying to give them another look, to further examine them and get a greater appreciation for them. And it's just weird because when a lot of these came out, I was completely out of the loop because I was focusing on anime, on Japanese animation so much that all this other animation slipped by me. Now, one of the funny things is, wow, have opinions changed since I started this journey. I say this because I remember when I started this mess, there were two films that I could not escape, that people were always talking about being these underrated animated classics. And they were Titan AE and The Black Cauldron. Back when I started this, those were the two movies to see. And I remember renting Titan AE and being like, what in the heck is the deal with this? It was okay. But I remember back then, it was like, oh, Titan AE is so fantastic, and Disney's Treasure Planet is just this garbage knockoff, and don't even watch it. It would take me years to finally get around to watching Treasure Planet, and my mind was friggin' blown by how much more I liked that one. No offense, Don Bluth, who I did not know was the animator of Titan AE at the time. I rented Titan AE, and I was like, I don't get it. It was an okay sci-fi movie. I would absolutely say Star Chaser: The Legend of Orin is better. I think I did say that. And I stand by that really, really hard. And then The Black Cauldron, I finally got around to renting that and watching that, and I'll give it credit, it is one of the most forgotten Disney movies ever, but cripes, did I not see what the big deal was with that movie. People are like, oh, it's this dark Disney movie and it's so different. I guess it does feel a little more in the realm of some of the non-Disney films, but The Black Cauldron was no Last Unicorn. And it's funny because now, you skip ahead and those two movies are constantly referred to as being bad, and that's just a well-known fact. And I'm like, wasn't always this way. I remember when people wouldn't shut up about how much they love these movies. So times certainly changed there. But yeah, a movie like Star Chaser and Legend of Orin, I literally heard nothing about that until the Nostalgia Critic reviewed it. And that review was actually so terrible. It's the reason why I hunted it down, because I'm watching the whole thing. Now, I mentioned it in my review. I'm watching his review of it, and I'm like, so your argument is this is just like Star Wars, even when it's being different from Star Wars, and how is this in a kid's film? Maybe we need to stop and actually appreciate it for what it is, rather than what it isn't, or what it's like, just on its own terms. And when I did, I was like, cripes. It's not the most amazing animated film, but the fact that it's so unknown and unwatched is actually kind of criminal. Because it's like, so many people put so much work into this, and you don't hear folks talk about it. And that's the most amazing thing. So much work goes into, especially the movies. All of these non-Disney animated movies And they have such a different style and flavor to them from a Disney movie that it's such a shame that they're so not discussed and not talked about. Sometime when I've watched enough of these, maybe I'll do like a top 10 non-Disney animated movies, but I can already tell you Last Unicorn's probably going to be number 1 or very close to it. Cripes, Last Unicorn was good. That should really be on my my to-do list, because that was one of the other ones that got me started there. Because I actually watched The Last Unicorn on accident. See, back then, I knew a girl who was really, really into Fushigi Yugi, and she gave me one of her tapes of it. Like, it was a random tape of anime. And somewhere in between the episodes of Fushigi Yugi, I think that's what was on that tape. I don't remember, but it was a bunch of episodes of anime, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of it was The Last Unicorn, and I didn't know what it was. I did not know it was The Last Unicorn. I did not know it was Western animated. I just didn't even know why it was there. And so the movie starts up, no clue what it is, utterly confused, and by the time the title actually comes up on screen, we're in the middle of that opening song, and I'm hooked in, and I friggin' loved that movie. It is so not Disney, and it is such a time capsule of when it was released. It has such a unique visual style to it. And the story is so unique. There's just nothing quite like The Last Unicorn. And it's a very melancholy film in a lot of ways, but yeah, after watching it, I was like, yeah, no, that was something special. That actually got me trying to hunt down other Rankin Bass animated films. When I was like, oh yeah, that's animated by Rankin Bass. What else did they do? Oh, they did The Hobbit and Return of the King, which, oh yeah, those are so much easier to obtain now. Back then, it was actually very hard to get your hands on the DVD of the animated Return of the King, which I enjoyed that. But in retrospect, I only enjoyed it because I had already seen the Peter Jackson one, so I knew what they were animating. In retrospect, like, on its own, as a standalone film, oh egad, what a disaster that is. But we'll talk about Return of the King when we get to reviewing Return of the King. I have a very definite soft spot for that one. Yo, that rendition of The Hobbit is pretty nice. But then I tried to watch A Flight of Dragons, and that was a fucking mistake. And weirdly, Rankin Bass didn't do much else that was, like, hand-animated, other than Last Unicorn, Flight of Dragons, Hobbit, and Return of the King. I need to double check. It feels like there's one or two more, but I think that's pretty much it. But that's pretty much where I sit in my journey of rediscovering animation. And I don't even think I need to tell you the appeal of animation. It's moving artwork. Yo, it's things people literally planned out and drew, and each one has a unique visual style, and they hold up so much better than old movies do. Because, like, old movies, the special effects age poorly. The style of acting changes so drastically, the way, the fashion, and the camera quality, and so many things change with live action film. And I mean, you gotta learn to appreciate that. But yeah, so many things have changed over the evolution of live action film like that. But when it comes to animated films, cripes, do you even realize how old Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is? Like, that thing is freaking ancient. Like, super ancient. I forget when it was released, actually, but it's old. As in, you know, it is the first, like, animated feature film, and it was a huge risk. Everyone was like, there's no way you could do an entire movie that's hand animated because it would hurt people's eyes because of the bright colors, and they'd just get annoyed by it.
people thought that it would be a complete disaster, and then it wound up being a gargantuan smash hit. That's the story behind Snow White. But you watch Snow White, and it looks just as modern today as it did when it came out. It has aged incredibly well. A lot of animated films age incredibly well, even when their art style, like Sleeping Beauty, had a very distinctive art style of the time, but it still manages to hold up really well, and it's one of the fascinating things about it. And seeing a literal piece of artwork, a drawing, move and act, that never gets old. That is always an amazing trick, especially when it's done well. So it's one of those things that keeps animation timeless. And then there's also the fact that animation has to be so hyper planned. Like, considering the amount of work that goes into literally every frame and how many frames there are in a second, every moment of an animated film takes so much work and has to be so meticulously planned out that a lot of animated films wind up being, like, really hyper-polished. Like, well, I guess I should say there's it's sort of a one or the other. It's like, it's either a complete dumpster fire because they didn't put in the work, or if they did put in the work, it winds up being a unique layer of hyper-polish that you don't get from live-action film because of just how exacting the process is. It all makes the entire thing very, very fascinating to me. And so, obviously, I love animation, I love anime, I've gained a newfound appreciation for Western animation, and, I'd like to share some of that with you guys, especially now in such a weird time, because, of course, there's a bunch of people reviewing these things on YouTube, and there's a bunch of people discussing them, but at the same time, there's not. Like, they're in the same ballpark, but, I want to throw my hat in the ring, obviously, and I've already started with Star Chaser, and I need to do another one of those. I'm kicking which one of those I'm going to do next around, and really, I need to do much of anything. I am legendarily lazy. But I hope I can provide a different perspective, and I hope this little rant here gives you an idea of my unusual perspective when it comes to animation. Especially, like, when it comes to anime, cripes. Bennett the Sage drives me up the wall. Like, I love his work, but the fact that he calls himself an old taku, and he started with Toonami, and I'm like, I remember when we made fun of you and called y'all Toonami kids. So what does that make me, a paleo taku? I think I'm gonna go with that. So it's like, there is a time before your time, Sonny. And let me tell you about it. But it is interesting, since, like, there is so much old anime that really deserve to be revisited. At the same time, like, a lot of, anime has also improved drastically over the years as well in terms of pacing and storytelling and how we're handling things. So it's like, I don't know how much old anime I can convince people to go back and watch, but some of the ones that really knock it out of the park we're going to talk about. And I'll talk about new stuff too. But I just find all of animation so much more fascinating now. I want to share some of that love with you guys, and I want to give you an idea of where I was coming from, my unusual history, not being a Disney lifer and being more of an anime lifer. Starting anime long before the majority of people did. Fetch me my hipster glasses. Let me tell you, Sonny, back in my day. It turns so many things on its head. And so I'm hoping that y'all can, well, appreciate that. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope this rant was entertaining. And I hope I can get off my butt and actually, like, script out and do a real episode on freaking anything at this point. Because, cripes, I am lazy.